After spending $10 million on Google Ads for clients, I've tested so many different campaign strategies, made a ton of mistakes, but finally figured out really the exact structure that we want to be running to actually be profitable and get a 4x ROAS on cold traffic from Google Ads when you're spending around $10, $20, $30,000 per month in spend. Of course, when you start to scale up, other campaigns become more relevant to use. But in this video, I wanted to break down the exact campaign structure I'm using. It's super simple. You can implement it if you're a beginner or a more advanced advertiser. So the first campaign that we want to run is called a feed-only Performance Max campaign. Now, if you haven't heard of that before, it's basically a Performance Max campaign that's bugged out to only serve on the shopping placement. Traditionally, when you run a Performance Max campaign, you have search, you have shopping, display, YouTube, discovery, all of the different networks that Google has to offer. You are serving ads on it with a traditional Performance Max campaign. But the issue is, when you really want to focus on a specific placement like shopping, you have to use a standard shopping campaign. What I like to do is leverage PMax's algorithmic capabilities by not giving it any assets whatsoever, except our product data, so that it's forced to only spend on the shopping network. And naturally, it does a little bit of remarketing, but I really like this for newer accounts because we want to be focused with our spend, but at the same time optimize for conversions without having to use something like manual CPC for a standard shopping campaign where we have to bid on traffic. And if we dive into the screen share here, we can see the exact setup. Most of the budget within this account is going towards that feed-only Performance Max campaign. And then when we look at our structure of the actual campaign, we have one asset group with 3 to 4 different product categories. It depends on your business. So if you're a higher SKU store, like the example I'm sharing right now, where we have thousands and thousands of SKUs, we want each listing group to be a different product category with a collection of products under it. If you're a smaller SKU store and you only have, say, 3, 4 SKUs, we just want to focus on those specific products individually. Now, the reason that I found this to work so well is because your budget isn't segmented across 5, 10 different campaigns for each different product category. You're leveraging all of the conversion data that you're getting into this campaign so that it has all the data that it needs, so that when you want to start scaling up spend and get to higher numbers, it very easily can do so and solves the problem that a lot of people run into, is that when they start to increase their spend, they don't see the ROAS increase as well, or the volume of conversion. And to get this campaign set up, you create a Performance Max campaign as you traditionally would, but when you get to the asset group section, you leave everything blank except the final URL, which allows you to publish the actual campaign, and then you customize the listing groups, that section that I was showing you before, with the actual products that you want to target. Now, if you're a low SKU store, you can just use item IDs to target the few products that you want to target. But if you're a higher SKU store, like the example we have, you might want to filter by product types to do the categories like I was showing, or you would even want to do custom labels to focus on higher margin products. It really depends on your business how you want to structure these product groups. But that is what is really going to get you the success. And think of the Performance Max campaign as a shell where we're optimizing for conversions and to get the best return possible, and really just target people that have intent to purchase, right? Because again, if we were running a standard shopping campaign, we have to start on manual CPC, and you're getting traffic, but there is no objective that Google is optimizing toward other than just getting traffic to your site. And the second campaign that I really like to layer in with a feed-only Performance Max campaign is a search campaign, because the best keyword research that you can do is organically through your data. And what I mean by that is, if we navigate to the actual search terms report right here, we can see that we're getting a lot of traffic for a certain type of keyword, and we can also filter by conversion value cost to see which ones are getting us the highest return. Of course, there's going to be products that got 80 cents in spend and then have an absurd return, but we want to be looking at the ones that actually have a lot of conversion volume. Now, in this account, we have around 165 conversions for this given campaign at the time range that I'm looking at, but we can really start to pick out some patterns. One thing I noticed was there were 2 types of product categories that were really doing well, and we set up a dedicated search campaign because there was a ton of volume just targeting a few of these keyword variations that were performing well in shopping on search. And so that really sprouted our search strategy, instead of us doing research and thinking, oh, we should target these type of keywords. Because remember, with any shopping campaign or Performance Max campaign, you don't have any keyword targeting. For Performance Max, you have search themes, which are insights into who to target, but they're not actually hard targets that the algorithm only optimized towards. They act as a signal or a point of insight. We want to be leveraging all of of the data that we're getting from this feed only Performance Max campaign to actually set up our search campaign to target similar queries and get a similar return on ad spend while just targeting another placement and getting more real estate on the results page. And one more bonus I would share for search campaigns, and it's honestly the reason that most people don't see success with search campaigns at all, is because they send all the traffic to a product page or a standard collections page without actually auditing the user experience. And what I mean by that is some brands, they might set up the search campaign, but then they see most of their traffic is on mobile. And then when you actually look at the landing page on mobile, there's a huge section that is just white with no information. We actually want to design a dedicated landing page, like a sales page, really talking about the product offering. For example, get a free sample for your first order, and then it showcases these best-selling products that we know are bestsellers because they're converting very well on Google Ads. And again, you're leveraging your own data to be able to build this page better. So I would even argue the fact that you're feeding your entire business with more data by running these ads alongside the actual return that you're getting, because organically it might be also worth trying to rank some pages for these keywords, or even in LLMs as well, optimizing pages towards actually showing for those queries. And real quick, if you're an e-commerce brand doing over 50,000 a month and you want to be getting better results through your Google Ads specifically to generate new customers, or every time you're scaling up your spend, like I was talking about, you're not seeing the return that you want, book a call with me. My link is in the description, and I'd be happy to walk you through the strategy that I would take for your brand, or just point you in the right direction with what I would optimize if you want to continue managing your account on your own. But back to the video, looking into the actual search campaign structure, we have the two different ad groups here that we know are winners based on the Performance Max campaign. And then I like to start this off on a maximize conversions bidding strategy, but a portfolio bidding strategy. So depending on how much account data you have, you might be able to launch with an actual target cost per action in mind. But again, if you don't have enough data, the algorithm is not going to be able to spend. So the idea is we at least start off optimizing for some type of conversions. Once we get 15 to 30 conversions, we start to see some consistency in performance. And then we actually set a TCPA target to make sure the algorithm is optimizing towards getting us a cost per sale. And the way that you can calculate what's profitable is almost like the reverse of ROAS. If a 3x return on ad spend is actually profitable for your business, you want to basically reverse engineer it and say, let me set my target cost per action of $70 if I know my average order value is $200 or $210, because that's going to get the 3x return on ad spend. And then once you have consistency on the TCPA, then we can move towards a TROAS, because how can the algorithm optimize for value of conversions when you don't have volume to begin with? So we're really strategical in terms of the flow of moving campaigns towards different bidding strategies and advancing the account. And we're doing this in a smart way, in the sense we're leveraging our own data without having to constantly guess, oh, what should we do? What should we test, until we find a winner? And as you can see, this eats up the bulk of the budget, right? We're running a little less heavy on search, but very heavy on the feed only PMAX. And we've got into setting a TROAS for it, like I explained with the structure that I was mentioning. And the rest of the budget goes towards two brand campaigns. I run a branded search campaign, which you probably have heard of, and a branded shopping campaign, which I find less brands have heard of. And we'll talk about both. So for branded search, we really just want to be targeting our own branded queries, because in the other campaigns, we have excluded branded terms. Why? Is because what's going to happen with Performance Max in particular, or optimizing for conversion-based bidding strategies, or when you leverage conversion-based bidding strategies, Google is always going to go after the lowest hanging fruit: remarketing audiences and branded terms. Right? So if you're not auditing your search terms, you might think on paper you're getting a 5 or 6x return on ad spend, but really the campaign is not spending on new customer acquisition. 80% of traffic is going to branded terms, and all of a sudden, your Google ads aren't actually as profitable as you think they are. So we want to make sure these branded terms are excluded from the feed only Performance Max. And Google also recently released an option to exclude remarketing audiences, which you can find by going to settings and clicking your data exclusions. So that way we've basically bulletproofed the campaign from being able to remarket and serve on branded traffic. And all of that branded traffic is funneled to our branded search and branded shopping campaign. Best practices for the branded search campaign are only to run exact match queries, because if you're running something like broad, you risk the reverse issue where you're showing up for non-branded terms, and maybe you're showing up for competitors as well, and all of a sudden you have a brand and non-branded campaign. So we want to make sure that there's clear segmentation between each. And for the more interesting last part is branded shopping campaigns. And if you haven't heard of this before, it's basically making sure that your own products are showing on your branded shopping results. So if you do a test search right now and search up your actual brand name, audit what you see there. So diving into a test search together, I did a branded search for a brand called Thursday Boots, and we see that they actually have a branded search ad running But a big problem, as you can see, is the fact that there's other brands showing in these sponsored products. And you can see it literally takes up half of this section of the results page. So it's really, really important we are protecting ourselves on this front. And the way that I like to do this is by running a branded shopping campaign with all of our non-branded terms excluded and at a target return on ad spend higher than the account average. Right? Because as we know, brand is naturally going to get a high target return on ad spend. It's the lowest hanging fruit. These people are typically already ready to buy. So by setting a standard shopping campaign with a very high ROAS, that way the only thing Google can do towards actually achieving that objective is going to be spending on branded terms. And you might be wondering, but I'm going to start getting non-branded terms in there and I'm not going to purely spend on brand. That's true, but once you've already filtered out a lot of negative keywords of non-branded terms that you don't want to be pushed into this campaign, eventually you'll start to see 80-90% of the actual terms that are showing in this campaign are branded. And the beauty I find of it as well is we're not really going for clicks, we're going for impressions. The click-through rate that you're going to have on these actual branded search campaigns is going to be at least 30, 40, 50%, and 30% being the lowest, while as with these branded shopping campaigns, you might only see a couple percent. And that's perfectly fine, right? Because Google doesn't charge you per impression, it charges you every time somebody clicks. And if we can get visibility on our branded terms as well on the branded shopping side, you're still saving yourself money, but still getting ads showing up. So it's exactly like a win-win in your scenario. You get to dominate both placements, but you don't pay as much in one to actually show up because Google doesn't charge you for impressions. Now you're still going to get clicks and that's going to spend your budget, but that's something to be conscious of. So to summarize the account structure as a whole, what we've basically done here is segmented out branded terms and non-branded terms and made sure that we can focus a dedicated amount of budget to non-branded terms, which is going to allow us to get in front of new customers who are in the market to actually buy our product, but actually have never seen us before, heard of us, or bought from us before. And so we want 70 to 80% of the budget going towards these campaigns so that we can actually see what is our return on these type of terms. And if it's above KPI, we know that we can comfortably scale it up and what exactly we're spending on. And for the branded campaigns, these are also to balance out investment and also to protect ourselves, like in the example I showed. You want to make sure that you're covering yourself on the shopping placement and also covering yourself on the search placement. Although this covers the full blueprint of the actual account foundation, setting up these campaigns properly is a whole different thing. So I want you to go watch this video, which talks about my feed-only Performance Max tutorial, labeled for high SKU stores, but really can actually work for any type of store. Just use the example that I mentioned if you're a lower SKU store of thinking of products instead of product categories. Alrighty, I'll see you in the next one.